Hey, this is Dr. Keith Hersey, and you are listening to the Destroying Diabetes podcast. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Keith Hersey. Welcome again to our Destroying Diabetes podcast. And like I said, I'm glad that everyone continues to listen or watch us on YouTube. I appreciate all of the feedback that I get, all of the emails, calls that I get. I really appreciate that. Keep that coming. Like I said, I have my email address at herseyhealthhelp@gmail.com. If you have any questions about anything that we have with any of our guests, any questions for me about type 2 diabetes, feel free to send an email. Like I said, I don't have a staff, so I answer each emails and I really appreciate it. And like I said, I'm still waiting for my first email from overseas. I haven't got one from overseas yet. I've gotten from different states and Canada, but not anything overseas. So if you're overseas, I really appreciate, even if you don't have a question, if you just want to acknowledge that hey, I'm in London or I'm in Paris and I listen to your podcast, I will really appreciate that. Um, so what I will do today is that, like I said, I'm just appreciative of everyone that listens and gives us feedback. And like I said, I appreciate that they let me do this again. They didn't lock me out. I'm just waiting for the day that they lock me out and I won't be able to do it anymore. But they let me on, so I'm really appreciative of it. Our guest today, we have a wonderful guest. We have Dr. Sophia Miranda, and she is a board certified health and wellness expert. She works in the diabetes field, and I thought she would be an excellent guest to have on. She says she works with type 2 diabetes, and that's kind of our thing here. And I think it's getting some insight from someone that works with it. That I know that a lot of times that I get emails of people that are stuck, that are challenged with it, maybe some little bit of overwhelm when they first diagnosed, or if they're diagnosed with pre-diabetes. And I just would like for her to come in. If you would like to introduce yourself at first, and then we can go into some of the things that works with you and your clients that you work with.
Sure, I can definitely do that. Thank you for the warm introduction. As Dr. Hershey said, my name is Dr. Sophia Miranda. I'm a national board certified health and wellness coach and also the founder of She's Empowered Coaching and Consulting Services. My work focuses mainly on helping women improve their metabolic health, particularly around diabetes, prediabetes, insulin resistance, and diabetes prevention. So I spent over 15 years working in the healthcare clinical research world. And during that time, I saw something that was a major gap in what we do in healthcare. And that's between what patients are told to do and what they can realistically implement into their daily practice every day. And that's kind of where health coaching comes in, is where we're able to help translate medical terminologies, recommendations into that practical and sustainable lifestyle strategies that support long-term metabolic health, particularly when it comes down to prediabetes. So a lot of my work centers around helping those women understand what's happening in their bodies, especially when it comes down to, as women, we have a lot of different changes. So hormone changes over time, how things look when it comes down to your nutrition, protein intake, stress management, you name it. All of this actually plays a part in our blood sugar level. So those are all the areas where I particularly work with clients. And a lot of the times, they come to me because they're confused, or they're really not sure where to start based off of what their labs say and what the doctor has given them as a diagnosis.
Yeah, and I definitely can, we definitely can understand with that, that, unfortunately, that diabetes and pre-diabetes has become like almost an epidemic in this country. I think they've said basically now that maybe 1 in 3 adults may have like pre-diabetes, and most people are not even aware of it. And
Yeah.
then we have so many that have diabetes. So, what is the when you work with your patients, say like if they like the first thing, if someone goes in and they're diagnosed as pre-diabetic, 'cause most people are probably not even aware when they diagnose, what how do you suggest that and with your experience working with patients that are at that stage, what are your suggestions as far as first if someone gets told from their doctor that they're pre-diabetic?
First, I would like to get back to one of the points that resonates here that you made when you said 1 in 3. So if you think about the quick math, that's like 98 million adults in the United States that have prediabetes and they don't know about it, right? So when they come to me, they don't really understand what it is when they're doing like their blood work. They may have come in, and I'll give you a great example. I had a client the other day. He had went in for his blood work because he wants to start working out and he is taking creatine. So the doctor said, well, let me check your blood work first before I could tell you if this is a good idea to start taking the creatine. Well, his A1C was the first time he was already pre-diabetic, quote unquote, because he was a 5.8, and then it moved up to a 6.3, right? So as you know, he's knocking on diabetes door at that point. And he didn't really understand what the blood work meant. Like, what's the significance of this number, right? The doctor gave, and doctors, this is no like knock on the doctors because they are fabulous at what they do when it comes down to diagnosing, but it's what happens after. It's like, okay, well, you need to go on a low carb diet. So what happens is then they come to me and say, well, I don't know what a low carb diet is because they've never had to get on a diet or they're not into the diet fads at that moment. And in his case, we had to go over like the routine blood work first to explain what that means. And a lot of the times they're just very confused because they don't feel bad, right? It's one thing if you go in and you're sick and you get and the doctor tells you something. It's another when you feel fine. And it makes it hard for someone to wrap around their head. What does it mean to be pre-diabetic? Because you're not quite diabetic yet, right? So they're not going to put you on a medication. So a lot of the times they're focusing on diet and exercise. So when they come in that stage, I give them two options. We either do a one-on-one coaching or I allow them to enroll if they're eligible into the pre-diabetes group I have, which is the diabetes prevention program through the CDC. And then we'll go over things such as physical fitness. We go over physical activities. We'll look at nutrition and how it plays a major role. So people will say, well, I'm in the gym all the time. I feel fine, but they haven't made any changes in their nutrition aspects of it. Or they're doing okay with nutrition, but they're very stressed out. So they're doing emotional eating. And these are things that we get to talk about when I'm working with clients. It's like, okay, your situation may be different than someone else's, but it's creating a routine that works for you, right? So if you're a person who works outdoors, so you might be a real estate agent, your routine may be a little different than someone who's an office manager, right? Or a stay-at-home mom, because your access to food is different. Your ability to maybe meal prep may be different. Your access to what you have that's available in your environment may be different. We deal with people who have food deserts, so they may live in a certain part of town that you can't readily go to a farmer's market, or you can't go to the grocery store. It may be 20-30 minutes out, so you kind of get what's around you. So there's a lot of things that that happens when they come to me. It's like really just assessing where they are at the moment and kind of meeting them there.
Exactly. And like I said, and I like to just, remind people that I work with, I always tell them is that you can't out exercise a poor diet. So like so no matter what you do, that's kind of the core in that. And I said that even if you don't do a lot of physical activity, just kind of changing that with the nutritional value of what you consume is probably the biggest impact on you, regardless whatever stage that you're in type 2 diabetes. Now, I know that one of the things, and I actually went to a webinar not that long ago. One of the things that is highlighted to me is that the strong increase, especially in younger patients now with type 2 diabetes, and especially women, more so. How do you address that with patients, especially like a younger patient that may be more surprised of a diagnosis or like pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes? How do you handle that?
Again, and you meet them where they are, because a lot of the time when they're coming to you, they're still kind of devastated. It's like with any diagnosis, right? You go into the doctor, you expect to get a clean bill of health, and you don't. I think it's a little more of a sticker shock when you're in your 20s and you've been diagnosed with prediabetes, because you're free spirited, right? But the truth is our food is not made the same. It's like it was 20 years ago when I may have been in my 20s, right? Or when I was younger. Food is a little different now. So we are including a lot more sugar into our things that you wouldn't think to have sugar in.
Yeah.
For example, bread, right? If you think about how you make bread, it has sugar in it. So it's really not about telling them anything in that moment. It's more about holding space for these individuals, seeing what they already know about prediabetes, because sometimes they come and they have a little bit of information on it. And those are the ones that are a little more afraid, because they may have a family history of family members having type 2 diabetes. And they're just like, well, I don't want that. And I don't know, how to go, where do I go from here? So I ask them, what do you know about diabetes in general? Once we establish what they know, then we may educate in that moment, or we may ask them, okay, what do you think would be a good place to start? Because at the end of the day, like I said, every young woman is different. The activity levels are different. Your stress levels are different. We incorporate and we take into account their work environment, where they live, what do you have, who's your support system, and things of that nature. A lot of people just want to feel supported in that moment. They don't want a bunch of information given to them, because you'll ask, what did you get from the doctor? The doctor will give them a packet of information, and they're just like, they're so overwhelmed that they haven't really had the opportunity to look at that. So we take it very slowly. That first session may look like just holding space for them, just hearing what they understand about it. And then if some people, what they think they know, they may not know, or TikTok is like the new Google right now. Like, well, TikTok told me to do, and I'm just like, well, research shows, right? Because I'm a research person. So I'll go into what research shows, this is what research says about this. So they may say, I need to go on a keto diet. Well, let's go over the pros and cons, right? So I'm not going to tell you no, because again, I need to understand who you are as an individual first. So a lot of the times it's those quick diet trends that I struggle with my younger population. And I get it, because when you're younger, you feel like you can snap back quickly from something. My older population, they're dealing with something different. They may be dealing with menopause or perimenopause. So they're going through these changes. So younger generation, we're dealing with PCOS. So we have other things that might also be playing a part in their diagnosis. So I do ask different questions, do you have any other diagnosis? And sometimes they do say, well, I also have PCOS, but that has a lot to do with my irregular periods. I'm like, well, actually, they're connected. Let me explain why. So giving them the opportunity to tell me what they know, and then give them information or clarity on top of that, allows them to build a plan for themselves that is more sustainable than it would have been if I would just tell them what to do. Right.
Exactly.
I think that has been the biggest impact in my younger and in all of the populations that I work with, but particularly my younger generation, is that they're internet driven. They love the internet. So they'll get on the internet really quickly. So since I know they're going to get on the internet, I will direct them to scientifically proven websites that teach them things about research. Like, okay, where'd you hear this? Again, they'll hear it on TikTok. Like, okay, well, let's do the science, the research behind it. And they're like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense, right? So then they'll start thinking about it. And I say, you always have to fact check what you hear online. I said, because not everybody is an expert, right? I said, just like your doctor is not a TikTok doctor, but you have to go into an actual medical practice to be seen and check do your blood work and things like that. I said, same thing goes with when you get diagnosed, or if you have a cold, you want to make sure that you're fact checking this, that this person's actually board certified, and it's not just somebody just waking up and saying, hey, I think this is a good idea. That's because that's where we get into a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely the thing. Like I said, a few years ago, it used to be like Dr. WebMD, and now it's Dr. TikTok and Dr. Chat GPT.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then that's one of the things that we have to combat. The great thing is that people have easy access to information that they never had access before. The bad thing is that people have easy access to misinformation that they haven't had before as well. So so it's kind of like the dual thing that we have to work with. So I know that you work with your patients. So like I said, a thing, and I'm sure you see across, and I see across with the people that I work with, is just the overwhelm, like when they like whether they're like diagnosed pre-diabetic or they are in type 2 diabetes. Like I said, there's a lot of things. What do you just really say to they're like someone that comes in and they're totally overwhelmed with the diagnosis, they're overwhelmed. Like I said, they've gotten all these sheets from the doctor. They're, some people, they put on medication. Some people, they have questions about, especially with the GLP-1s, that there's a lot of information and misinformation, and asking about that. What would you be your advice for someone that comes in, they're overwhelmed, they have a ton of information, kind of like a thing to kind of set them and get them on the path?
Well, first thing we'll do is just breathe. Just take a deep breath, right? And ground yourself. And the reason for that is because when your mind is everywhere because you've gotten this diagnosis, you're no good to yourself in that moment, right? You're not processing the information at all. 9 out of 10 times they come to session with their paperwork, right? So it allows us to look at it together. And while we're looking at it, again, it's about self-education. So I want to know what you know already. As we're going through it, like you said, we have a lot of misinformation out there. So I will notate what they don't quite understand, then we'll clarify those particular things. After we're done clarifying those things, it just depends what stage are you in. Are you pre-diabetic? Are you type 2 diabetic? Are you insulin resistant? Like there's different things that happen in there. And then I talk to you about like your normal life. What exactly do you do every day? What does a normal day look like to you? Right. I think that's one of the most eye-opening questions, is asking, what does it take me through one of your days? Take me through a day in a life of Sophia. And they'll take me through their day, and I'll just notate it. I say, okay, what are some things that you feel that have, contribute to this diagnosis? And then, well, I don't understand. Since January, I've made a change. So, well, you've gotten your A1C done in February. I said, I will tell you, the A1C tells on you. I said, because it looks at the last 3 months. I said, so what happened last 3 months? They're like, oh, well, the holidays, right? Yeah. They're not thinking about the things that they had in the past. I said, you have to understand it stays in your blood levels and things like that. It's from the last 90 days. I said, so that gives them a little bit of peace, especially the ones who come to me at the beginning of the year, because November was Thanksgiving, December is Christmas. There's a lot of heavy foods that are being eaten during that time. Or I hope people sometimes say, well, I don't eat a lot of sugar. But then you listen to what they've had potatoes, pasta, rice, like all the things are heavy in carbs that break down to sugar. So having them understand what that means and what that looks like. And also just the mindset that, there's a helpful mindset, in particular, that diabetes and prediabetes are not only about sugar intake, right? Because I think that's one of the biggest things, that the biggest misconceptions, like, I don't eat candy. Right. Like, yes, you don't. But for us, it's like the deeper issue is more about insulin resistance. So, and I say that, that develops when the body cells stop responding effectively to insulin. And it's like understanding, okay, well, what is insulin? These are words that they don't hear of before. When we have them, that they come in, they're just like, well, what does that mean? I said, well, it's really about understanding what insulin is. And that's usually what the root issue is. I said, then we begin to see why these things are happening. So then we look at nutrition quality. We're looking at muscle mass. We're looking at stress. We're looking at sleep. All of this influence your blood glucose regulation. And then they're like, well, okay, I am not a great eater. The doctor, we've tried so many things, because a lot of people who come in had already diagnosed with diabetes. They've already had these conversations with the doctor, and they've hadn't had a chance to go to a health coach or go to a registered dietitian, because I do work with them where we work as a unit. So it might be the physician, the dietitian, and myself. And when that happens, they kind of already know where they've messed up, and they'll start talking about, well, my doctor wants to put me on an Ozempic, or my doctor wants to put me on Zepbound. The doctor says I need to lose a little bit of weight, and things like that. It's like having them understand, okay, what does it mean to be on a GLP-1, right? It's not just about losing weight, because what happens is a lot of the times they'll lose weight quickly, but you also lose muscle mass at the same time. So it's like, okay, well, let's build a plan in where you're also doing some type of physical activities that helps with strengthening your muscles, and understanding that you don't have to do it at the gym, right? If you like gardening, squatting, you don't realize how much you squat in gardening. I tell you that just from personal experience recently. And I'm just like, wow, my legs really hurt. Well, that's building the muscle mass in your legs. So it's like explaining all of that during a visit. Usually, if it's a patient coming to me with a diagnosis of prediabetes or diabetes, I usually have an hour window for those patients, because they have to understand first what it means, what's insulin, understanding that it's not just sugar intake. And then we can get into the root cause of it. After they understand the root cause of it, then understand what to ask the doctor, because it's not just about helping your client, but it's also helping them be an advocate for themselves. If they're not comfortable with a certain medication, ask questions about it, research it, understand what the pros and cons of it, and then bring it back to the doctor and ask questions. So I think those are the big important things that I do when I'm working with clients.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely that's one of the things that I think that we provide. We kind of fill into the gap between knowledge and misinformation. Like I said, a lot of people, like you said, they're not aware of the different sources of uh we can increase like their blood sugar. I always work with people, and we work on the thing, we work on nutrition, of course, and movement, sleep, and stress. Those are the four things that we work on, and then how all four of those can impact your blood glucose levels. And just that people are not aware, and just like so many of the sources of carbohydrates, especially like unrefined carbohydrates, like I said, it's in things that you don't think of, like like said, like soups, spaghetti sauce, things like that. You don't think of breads, that you don't think of, because people think of something directly, like something that's sweet or whatever, and they may not, eat that, and or eat very little of it, but they still have uncontrolled blood sugar. And yeah, it's definitely that. And then how do you also, one of the things that, other than you had a great article, and like I said, you need to follow Dr. Miranda on social media. She has some great articles concerning diabetes, and I think you had a really good one dealing with like perimenopause. So patients. So how did the people that they're already going through life changes, what kind of quick advice would you give someone that's at that stage of life?
Well, I think the biggest advice is understanding what to eat during that time in your life. So what happens when, you hear this a lot with female clients who are dealing with perimenopause and menopause, is like the things that were working are no longer working. I haven't changed my routine, but now these things are happening. And one of the things we talk about is protein. So protein is, we prioritize protein to balance your nutrition. Protein helps usually stabilize your blood sugar levels, and it supports like that lean muscle mass that we need. So many women, especially during that time, we just do not eat enough protein throughout the day. So that's one of the things that we discuss at length. And it's because balanced meals that include things, not just protein, but protein, fiber, and healthy fats allow for a slower glucose spike. And it supports more of a stable levels in their bodies. And they're like, well, why do I have to do that now? It's like, well, because estrogen is fluctuating. So how we would deal with our estrogen is very different, where we're not having any issues, before we get to the change, what a lot of women call it, we don't have any issues there. So what you find is when your estrogen starts to fluctuate or starts to decrease, it will increase your glucose. So with talking to women in that regard, it's really understanding how do we balance that with the idea that they are included with one another, right? So a lot of times if you go to the doctor and you talk about menopause, they'll never ask you about anything else. They'll just focus on that being a woman's health issue, right? So when I talk to women, I ask them to be advocates for themselves and ask if they've been diagnosed with prediabetes, say, does this have anything to do, or is it connected to me also going through having menopause or going through menopause? Because they are connected. So understanding your, not only just estrogen, but understanding cortisol levels are higher during that time too. And it's like, everybody thinks that cortisol is a bad thing. And I'm like, it really isn't, right? So we need our stress hormone, but it's understanding how it works during this time, because our bodies are going through so many different changes. Like when women become moms, their body goes through a change, right? So we have all these different changes that affect everything. I think that's the beauty of just a woman's body, is understanding the differences that one thing like your estrogen, how that connects to another thing like your glucose levels, right? So there's a lot of things that impact our blood sugar that we have to understand. So it may not just be food, but we can help with eating a little more protein. Again, that goes to when they give us things like GLPs and things of that nature, increasing your protein. So people are like, well, I don't really like to eat a lot of meat, right? Well, I don't eat a lot during the day. And you start to listen to them. It's like, do you have more of a sanitary lifestyle? Like, are you sitting most of the time? Like, yes. I'm like, okay, well, I want to pay attention to that as well. I want to pay attention to, really, it doesn't always have to be like an intense workout, but just regular movement. Like if I'm sitting here, just stand up every couple, like on the hour. We talk about watches as well. So at that time, they're like, well, my joints hurt. You have so many things that happen over 40. They tell you, like, there's a joke, a running joke, that you fall apart after 40. And I understand the joke now. But when we're talking about these things, it's like understanding that we're looking for regular movement because it's going to help improve the glucose control. So people don't understand how much impacts your glucose level, right? So you think it's this delicate flower that's kind of by itself and it only has to do with eating something sweet, when you have all these other things that happen. Another thing that happens during perimenopause and menopause is our sleep cycle changes, right? Some women are dealing with hot flashes. Some women are dealing with, they just can't sleep, right? So at night, when you're looking at that, when you can't sleep, then you feel stress. So they kind of go together. That's another thing that influences your glucose regulation. So when you have poor sleep, it can, it's going to disturb your hormones. It involves your appetite. So it's like this cycle that happens. And once women understand this, and they understand like what chronic illness or chronic stress, can do to increasing the cortisol level, which then rises your blood sugar, then we're getting somewhere. They're like, okay, wait, so all this is connected? And it's like, you have this aha moment. And I'm like, yes, that's all connected. And they're just like, that makes sense, because I haven't had these set of issues until I went through menopause or until I, started to go through perimenopause. Like, okay, well, what can we do? And then we sit down as the coach, right? And we're like, okay, well, tell me about your life. Like, how is this affecting you? And they may take supplements, but again, I have them always go back to their doctor to ask if that's something safe for them to do while they're being prescribed whatever the doctor has prescribed them. So it's a wild time when you get a
Yeah.
little older to
Yeah.
go through different changes in life. And women are always constantly changing. You go through puberty, you go through, your childbearing years, and then going into premenopause to menopause. It's like we're just ever growing into a new person. So that was really where my article was coming from, is really
Mhm.
for people to understand, for women to understand, hey, you're not alone in this. Women are dealing with this. And yes, it does affect your blood sugar levels, in that regards. So I hope I answered your question.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you definitely did. You definitely did. And thank you so much for everything that you provided. There's so many nuggets of wisdom that you provided for us today. And I really appreciate for you to take some of your day time out to parlay that to my audience, and I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of great feedback from that. So, and in just conclusion, I'll let you just briefly know, like, let our audience know, how they can contact or follow you.
Yes. So I am on YouTube. It's Dr. Sophia Miranda on YouTube. If they want to follow me on social media, they will find me under She's Empowered, one word, coaching and consulting. If they're trying to look for me on Instagram, that's typically where I do a lot of my educational posts and things like that. They can find me under She's Empowered, one word, underscore coaching.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And again, we'll have also some of the links to that as well in the show notes. And like I said, Dr. Miranda, I really thank you for coming in today. I'm sure that our listeners will really enjoy everything that they heard from you. And like I said, feel free to give feedback. Like I said, I have my email address in the show notes. If you have any questions that you want me to relay to Dr. Miranda, I will pass them along to you. And again, I'd like to thank our audience for taking a little part of your day to listen to us. I know that you have a lot of things going on. And like I said, I'm always appreciative of people that take a little small part of their day to get further education. Like I said, the goal of this podcast is to provide education to help you destroy diabetes. And again, thank you so much for listening. And as I always say, be well and be blessed.
Thank you for joining us on this informative journey. The content of this podcast is solely the professional opinion of the host for informational purposes only. It should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you're experiencing any health issues or concerns, we strongly recommend that you seek the counsel of a qualified healthcare provider before making any changes.